We are live. We are live. We are live. This is Soapbox Heroes, and my name is Tyrone Irvin. Today we are back. We have a very, very interesting conversation today. When the topic was brought up, I couldn't wait to hear it. We have Christina on today, and we have Jerry on today, and we're going to be talking about the history of education before public funding. Once again, the history of education before public funding. So before we get into it, I'm going to let both of my distinguished panelists introduce themselves, let you guys know who they are, just in case you haven't seen them yet. Let's start with you, Christina. Christina, you want to take a second to introduce yourself, let everybody know who you are?
Hello, I am Christina Lasker. I am the Inland Empire Parent Union President and the San Diego Parent Union President. Also, the NAACP Education Chairwoman for Southwest Riverside County. Hello, everybody.
Hi, Christina. Everybody say hello to Christina. And before we leave, we're going to get your information again so people know how to contact you. Jerry, you want to take a second and let everybody know who you are?
Again, Jerry Green. We do student advocacy mainly for Black students. And since we've been around less than 2 years, we've consulted for over 950 situations.
Wow, 950?
Yes, in less than 2 years.
That's a lot. That's a lot of people that's a lot of help. That's a lot of help that's given.
And we're not even scratching the surface.
You just getting started?
Yes.
You just putting on your bootstraps.
For real.
Okay, you guys. Hey, what Christina, Jerry, what gave you guys the inspiration to want to talk about this in particular, the history of education before public funding?
Well,
you know, yeah, you go ahead, Jerry. Let's go.
You know, it's for, I'm here to learn a lot also. Christina is more of authority on it than I am, and I'm okay to mention what I don't know or what I can't speak to. So I'm here to learn at the same time, and then I'll chime in as needed and, let it go like that. When I hear of education before funding, I think of parents teaching their kids, aunts, uncles, grandparents teaching the kids and things like that. You know, for a close-knit organization, and we taught our own to see the value of education and things like that. So I'll stop there and let Chris jump in with both feet and do her thing.
Okay, Christina, what gave you the inspiration to want to talk about this? Why did you want to go ahead and bring it out? What put it on your mind?
Well, after the last time that we had a discussion, what I realized is that there are a lot of people distracted with the funding portion of public education and not the actual educational component. So I wanted to talk about more so the framework and what education should look like, and let's talk about the money another day. You understand what I'm saying? Because that leads to a distraction that takes us into a whole separate issue when we need to be looking at actually what is being taught to our children and what has historically been done to secure education for children, our children in particular. So that's what inspired me, and I think that a lot of people have a misunderstanding of what the state and federal roles are with regards to public education. And so clearing up this portion will help us to move forward and be able to talk about funding and even equity in funding and resource allocation.
Okay, and as you can see, I sat in the classroom today. I got my chair pulled all the way up. I have my notebook in front of me, my pen, my pencil, some water. So I'm ready. So give us, what are some differences in between the state and federal roles? Like, break it down, because I'm ready to learn tonight.
And Tyrone, I think something else also is Christina, with her background, she comes from she's an educator.
Right.
She has an educator. So I come totally from outside the education arena. So she has some on the hands experience, on the job training, back room perspective, inside the house, eyes, and also seeing the treatment of what's going on with our kids from the employee side of a district. So also
Okay.
want to make sure we emphasize that also.
Okay, okay. And just to make I want everything to be clear. Christina is speaking for Christina. She's giving
I love it. And
she's
today, because it's an informational session, you will probably get a home and garden feeling from me. Okay. So I want to just get as much information out there as possible. And, basically, I appreciate you, Jerry, for giving some of my background. I did work for 13 years in the public educational system through a school district. And, I have a bachelor's in political science. So I do have a lot of studies on politics and policies and political behavior, I'll call it that, and systems. Also, my master's in business administration, so business framework, also a lot of background in that. So when I talk about these things, I use the culmination of those experiences and the information that I have and that I know, plus that I'm still learning to be able to disseminate or share with you guys. And so I hope that any questions that you have, you wouldn't hesitate to ask, even if it's at a later time. That way I can get that information to you. Because of the intensity of amount of information that I learned over a period of years, okay, and I need everybody to be paying attention to this. I didn't just arrive at this, these as assumptions. So over a period of time, gaining the knowledge and information and experiences, I try to give you all the information so that you could then research more. I heard someone pose a question after the last time of we discussed a lot of information but did not tell the public what to do next. Well, it's not my job to guide your decision making. What it is, though, that I would like to do is give you informed, help you to make informed decisions. So I give you the information, and I believe that you as a person, if you need help with that information, then yes, of course, we're here to help you. However, when I give you the information, I want you as people to decide what is going to be best for your life, your child, and what's next. Okay. And how do you feel about that, Jerry?
That's true. And again, my conversation and my speaks are about the experiences that I've had in dealing with these school districts and things like that. And I do say, you have to get involved. You have to pay attention to when your baby comes home and says, hey, my teacher don't like me. What does that mean? So yeah, you have to be managed from the inside out.
okay.
Right. Okay. So sorry, you guys, I'm losing my voice because I advocate every day of the week, and it doesn't matter. I will still use my voice to say free these young minds and let my people go. What I want to do is look at the overarching picture so that we could differentiate the role of the federal government and then the role of states in public education framework and how that came to be. What I want to talk about is, first of all, the overall American experience, and then I want to disaggregate that according to our experience as Black people. So if you have your pens and paper ready, we can go ahead and go. So I know you guys have heard me say in the past that there was no federal constitutional right to a public education, okay? So keeping that in mind, that there is no constitutional right to education, we have to start looking at the history of the involvement of certain entities, governmental entities, the federal government versus the state government's role in education and creating policies behind education. So when the U.S. Department of Education became a cabinet level agency, it wasn't until 1979. There was a battle, and which exists to this day. I hear it when people talk about well, shouldn't we just federalize education completely, or should the states have this level of control? So let's look at this historic battle, and that battle is between the states versus the federal government, which is the debate of now, where some rally in opposition to federalization of education, which allows power back to the states. So there's a group of people that are totally against, and in this conversation, we're going to be non-biased. I'm just presenting information to you. There's a group of people that have historically said it's not the federal government's role to have a say in what happens with regards to education. That power belongs to the state. And there's other people that would like to see the federal government give a more defined role as to what their job is in the educational policies, procedures, and framework. So when people say, what is going on? Why can't we do this or why can't we do that? Just know that there has historically been this same argument, okay, about the federal government's role in education. So in the 10th Amendment, this is the basis for a lot of power that the states have had in delegating the power to do something as far as forming public school systems, because it says that the powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution nor prohibited by it to the states are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Okay, so since, again, there's no constitutional right or guarantee to education system of public education, this 10th Amendment framework allows states power to create schools and school framework for education. So it is not something that the national government has to jurisdiction over, is the creation of schools and public school frameworks for states. Okay, you guys got that?
Yeah.
Got it.
Okay. So all the states then have the ability to create and provide public education, and their approaches look differently. Okay, so no one state is going to approach things 100% exactly the same as another state. And these powers, according to the 10th Amendment, are delegated to the state and the people therein. So you're going to see different approaches when we're talking about education, because it's all based off of this constitutional amendment, since there is no constitutional right to education. Okay, so then when you look at the public schooling at the state level, and I want to start in the 1700s, okay, because we could really go really back to the Massachusetts Bay Colony in the 1600s and see where they actually had some public schools operating. But for the sake of time, we're going to start in the 1700s. Any of you that need that information or want to look up that, you know what, you historians, go for it. Okay, I admonish you to. So in 1790, we look in Pennsylvania, and Pennsylvania started to require education. Well, what does that mean, that they started to require education? I don't know how many of you have heard the term of compulsory education or compulsory attendance. Jerry, have you heard about that?
The compulsory. Say it again.
Go ahead.
Compulsory education or compulsory attendance.
Yes, I have heard it, not knowing fully what it meant, but I had heard that phrase before.
I haven't heard of it at all.
Okay, so if we are, so in 1790, Pennsylvania provided public education for poor families under the assumption that wealthy people could afford to pay for school. Bottom line, okay? So let me take you to the document. Okay. So anyway, and we're gonna look at some documents soon. So you guys that like taking notes, get ready. When we're talking about the education systems that were formally approached in the framework that was offered therein, we start looking at 1820, or sorry, 1805, New York then followed the same framework of providing a public education to poor families under the same assumption, because they saw what Pennsylvania did, and then they followed that. So what we're looking at is that led to the requirement of compulsory education. Compulsory education is what we in the U.S. have as far as our educational system now. So children are mandated by state to attend school K through 12.
Compulsory education.
It is the attendance requirement, okay?
Okay.
So compulsory education is also referred to often as compulsory attendance.
Okay.
So the leading up to the public school offerings then led up to compulsory education movement, okay? And this is this is starting with, like I said, in the 1600s, you'll find Massachusetts-based colonies have public schools, but we're talking about, for the sake of time, 1790, Pennsylvania started to provide free education. 1805, New York followed and adopted what Pennsylvania did. And then, you know, we see again in 1820, Massachusetts offered tuition-free high school, okay? But like I said, in that time frame is when they began to require compulsory education. Any questions?
No.
Did you? So, so then we look at the late 1800s, and public education began to expand and spread throughout most of the states historically, and that is what we call the Common School movement. So if you look at the Common School movement, you will see that happened in the 1800s. Public education began to spread. Guess what spread with it? The idea of compulsory education. Okay? So now let's take a step back and look at the federal government's role, because like I told you before, that they didn't define or address the right to a public education in the Constitution. Therefore, anytime you do not see something established in the Constitution or law or policy, you know, you have to follow an established precedent. So this is pretty much what you see the Supreme Court or the higher courts doing. They base decisions off of legal precedent, correct?
Correct.
Right.
Okay, so because the federal government had not set forth a precedent with regards to the state and what the education system should be and the right to education and things like that, you see states start to pick up off of the precedent that's already been established between other states, and that's how compulsory education again happened. However, what I want to talk to you about is with regards to precedent and using them under laws and to create policies and procedures and new amendments and things like that, is that those things can be left up to a matter of interpretation. Okay? And that interpretation can vary. We see that even with the Supreme Court writings of, you know, what happens with the rulings and the precedents and things like that. If you have time, you can go. That's a whole other area of law that we don't have to get into right now. But I just want you to know that you have to be able to look at what is historically taking place, because it's that precedent that is basically we're living under now.
Give us an example, Christina.
So with the compulsory education, that precedent was set back in the 1800s, and we still have that in effect today.
Okay, that's when it was established. Was the 1800s, and so that was the precedence. That's when it kind of bucked the trend and became the norm.
Exactly.
Okay.
Okay. And so that's an example that I'm going to use about public schools. Okay. And the thing about it is that, yes, the states have the ability to create public school systems and the authority to basically within that creation say what that we're going to look like.
Okay.
So I guess my question to you would be, are you going to be innovative, or are you going to see what works and then copy that? If you were back in the 1800s and it was to your power to create a public system of education, and it was really intended at the beginning to serve people that couldn't afford it, right?
Right.
And now you have the power to create that in your state. What kind of method would you use?
You're just going to mirror.
Yeah, you're going to use the same method. You're going to do it because it was successful somewhere else.
Right. Okay, so let's talk about 1787. Okay, so in 1787, Continental Congress, which is the central government of the U.S., between 1776 and 1787, they passed what is called the Northwest Ordinance. And if you look at the link I gave you,
okay,
it's the second link. Okay. So open the second link so people can see that I'm not just making this stuff up. And like I said, I'm giving you guys so much information that, you have to go and add it out to get the full picture. So right here, you see this document, and it says the Northwest Ordinance. So this became a governing document, okay? And it was a governing document for Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and part of Minnesota. If you look down to Article 3, can you scroll down to Article 3? And this is what I'm talking about, precedents being set forth too. Okay. So can everybody, I don't know if people can see that. Jerry, can you see that?
I can see it.
Article 3 is right here at the top.
If you have to go down a little bit to the bottom, I'm sorry, it says ART 3.
Yes, I'm there. I highlighted it.
Okay, so on yours, it should say religion, morality, and knowledge. Do you see that?
Yes. Yep, we're there.
Okay, so here is the precedent that was set forth with and it was religion, morality, and knowledge being necessary to good government and the happiness of mankind. So everybody can see that, right?
Yes.
Sorry, let me open my schools and the means of education shall forever be encouraged. Okay, what does that word encouraged mean to you, right? The utmost good faith shall always be observed towards the Indians, well, we call them natives now, and their lands and property shall never be taken away from them without their consent, and property, rights, and liberty, they shall never be invaded or disturbed unless in just. So at the beginning, we started talking about education. Now, throughout this document, and you can go back and ask Tyrone for it, you will find a lot about liberty, property, and slave ownership. Okay, so pay attention though, because this is in 1776. So it addresses things such as the encouragement of education, schools, and the means of education. Okay, and also, it notes about property, cruelty, punishment, all of those things inside of this Northwest Ordinance that was the governing factor document for Ohio, Illinois, Indiana, Michigan, Wisconsin, and parts of Minnesota. Now, for you brave historians out there, can anybody tell me what else took place in 1776.
I'm sorry, what did you say, Christina? You broke up just a little bit. I think it might be on my end. What'd you say?
I said, so for some of these brave historians, what else took place in 1776?
What else took place in 1776? I don't know. Personally, I don't know what of significance happened in 1776.
This country.
Oh,
So,
the
right.
institution of
So
this country.
we have the Declaration of Independence, right? So I want now when I was talking about all these things, I want you guys to pay attention to the dates because the establishment of these things were taking place. But where were we as Black people?
Slavery.
Right. Okay. So when you're talking about this Northwest Ordinance right here that was created in 1776 that said, property, liberty, no slavery, where were Black people at?
It wasn't for us.
Okay. So was it? I'm glad you said that because I was wondering. Typically, when we see the mention of Black people at that time, it would say the Negro, but we weren't even emancipated then, so that document did not pertain to us. You can go back and look at it, and I'm glad that it granted and encouraged a means of education to some people that wasn't our plight. So I just wanted to have you guys be aware of that the timing on this was, yes, there was the Independence, the Declaration of Independence, the same year, 1776, but the emancipation of Negro slaves had not even been proclaimed yet.
That was 1863.
Right. And, really interesting fact is that Lincoln actually gave a preliminary emancipation back in September of 1862. So when war took place and he felt like the time was right to bring up this point that the slaves should be free, he gave a preliminary proclamation in 1862 that was then looked at formally in 1863. So along with that Northwest Ordinance, we have what also was called a land ordinance. Okay, so the land ordinance granted appropriation of land to be reserved for school buildings and townships. That you guys can look that up again and see exactly what that meant. However, we know where we were, and we were not a part of this scenario right here. So the role of the federal government it began to expand after the Great Depression. Okay, and I know some of this is boring to some of you guys, but it's very important that you pay attention to these things. I'm gonna wrap it all up in the end. So when you start seeing the expansion of federal government in all aspects and areas of life, you see that their role greatly expanded after the Great Depression or World War II, but that still did not include K-12, their role for K-12 education. So we don't really see the inclusion of the federal government making, and especially them declaring their defined role in public education K-12 until the 1960s. So it was basically ordered under the state government. And like I said before, they had the ability, the power to create the public institutions by what they wanted to. And typically that happens by something that's already been established. So we look at a precedent on that. So in 1960s, in 1964, and this is where it's going to start getting really fun. So in 1964, we have President Lyndon B. Johnson, who developed educational policy as part of his Great Society framework. So let's talk about Lyndon B. Johnson for a minute. Okay, so can you open up the fourth link down?
There go our guy, Lyndon B.
Okay. And by the time I provide this information to you, I do not know if he will still be your guy. Okay. So anyway, so like I said, I'm just providing facts. We're going to talk about this. So if you scroll down, we can see that he began extensive legislation, national programs, and so what we have happening, and I want people to think about 1964. Okay, 1964 is something vital happened in 1964, and I will tell you if you can't guess. So, and we have the anti-discrimination laws, which also laws, the Civil Rights Act of 1964. Okay, so let's just establish that we have those laws. But in 1965, and Lyndon Johnson comes in, and he wants to create this Great Society program to, combat things, aid in education, attack on disease, and says it here in the document, Medicare, urban renewal, beautification, conservation, development of depressed regions, and a wide-scale fight against poverty, control, and prevention of crime and delinquency, removal of the obstacles to vote. So 1965, we get an amendment to Medicare, Social Security Act, whatever. But in 1965, we have the creation of a document called the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA. So this is where you see the federal government establishing its role in public school systems as a active player. They come up with a document, and it's called the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, ESEA, of 1965. This becomes a law, and it created a shift, like I said, between the federal government's role into education, K through 12, because with that built in, and we'll talk about this later, under ESEA, we now have the establishment of the Title I funding.
And also, Chris, at that time, he said that Title I parents should be involved in their child's education. And that's when he came with follow through and Head Start.
Right. So if you go down, there is mention of anti-poverty and anti-discrimination programs, and also some mention of, we look up more history on him, education for early childhood education. Now, here is where I want you guys to be looking at people's intentions when they are creating certain legislation, and just, basically what that means for us today. Okay, so can you go down to where it says Snopes?
Snopes, yep.
Okay. Okay. So, my system is still loading. So we want to take a look at Mr. Lyndon Johnson based on some public discussion about conversations that he had. Because, can you close it where it says Snopes needs your help?
Yeah.
And, it's always nifty to be able to go to Snopes and find out if things are true or fact, and you get, some discussions and going with some experts and some different people. So I just used what was the most common thing as far as
you're breaking up a little bit, Christina. I don't know. Is it on my end? Do you hear it too, Jerry?
I do, Chris. I think if you keep leaning back, then your Wi-Fi, when you lean in, That's where you might have a problem.
Oh, okay. So, can you hear me now?
It's still fuzzy, so you might have to lean back a little.
Hello?
It's still a little bit fuzzy. Here, let me see right here. I can see your connection. Oh, Christina, you don't have a connection. Her connection is low.
I'm sorry about it. Might be where at. Let's try to see 1 second. Okay, let me try to fix it. Hold on, guys.
Okay.
Right now, you're good.
We hear you good now. Your connection got a little better. You're up in the yellow.
It's probably you leaning back that might be working. It's just the movement when you lean in.
Well, you know, I'm always animated when I talk. Right?
that's us as a people. We're very animated.
Right. So, you know, I'm trying to get all this data out as much as I can. And okay. So let's look at Mr. Lyndon B. Johnson. Tyrone, can you read that little quote up there? It said, okay, so Lyndon B. Johnson was alleged to have stated that if he gave Black people welfare programs such as food stamps and things like that, he'll have, and you see the N-word, voting Democratic for the next 200 years. Okay?
Wow.
Let that sink in. Okay? So you see all these wonderful things, but don't be so quick all the time to think that they're actually wonderful. So I want you to go down and read about remark. And like I said, I'm just giving you information so that you can check on them. So basically, it was cited in a variety of contexts. You can see that as an example of his opportunism, and as an example of his crassness, and as an example of his racism and hypocrisy. And as an example of the racism and hypocrisy, and I'm not talking about any party in particular, I'm just sharing the facts about the person that first created the Elementary Secondary Education Act, okay? So they said they don't have a high degree of confidence. However, there's no question that Lyndon Johnson, despite championing the landmark Civil Rights Act of 1964 and signing it into law, was also a sometime racist and notorious vulgarian who rarely shied away from using the N-word in private. For example, he reportedly referred to the Civil Rights Act of 1957 as the quote-unquote nigger bill. In more than one private phone conversation with Senate colleagues, and reportedly said, upon appointing African-American Judge Thurgood Marshall to the Supreme Court, son, when I appoint we see it right there, to the court, I want everybody to know that's who he is. Okay, so let's keep looking. According to the historian Doris Kearns Goodwin, he also uttered this cynical-sounding statement, sometimes circulates in tandem with the quote-unquote voting Democratic. These Negroes, they're getting pretty uppity these days. Are you showing that part? And that's a problem for us.
It won't let me.
Something now. Okay, so I'm just reading it. Since they got something now, something they've never had before, the political pull to back up their uppityness. Now we've got to do something about this. We've got to give them a little something, just enough to quiet them down, not enough to make a difference. For if we don't move at all, then their allies will line up against us and there will be no way of stopping them. We'll lose the filibuster and there will be no way of putting a brake on all sort of wild legislation. It'll be Reconstruction over again.
Okay.
What you think about that?
He didn't have any good intentions for the N-word whatsoever. And I was going to tell you, it wouldn't let me scroll down on that particular article from Snopes. It just let me show the headline, but it was from Snopes.
Well, people can can look that up, and I will tell you that the historian says that the reason that he said there's several quotes, okay, of things that he said, and the historian said, in all fairness, we have to say that he might have just been talking this way to people that had that kind of mentality in order to gain their alliance.
Yeah, that sounds good, but if you have to bend yourself that much to gain people's alliances, I don't know exactly how bad you want that alliance, but I understand they'll say that it's politics. So I hear it.
Okay, and so they were able to gather, and this is something that you guys can look at. They were able to gather one confirmed, report of what I had told you initially of, things that he had said, but because they couldn't corroborate too, they said that they didn't know if that was actually factual. What do you think about that, Gary?
I didn't hear your question. What's your question again?
I didn't back.
I'm trying. Repeat your question, please.
Okay, I said they only had one person that could historically corroborate that this is what he said about us voting for the next 200 years. If he gave us a little bit of something, but not enough to make a difference, right? That he would have us voting Democratic for the next 200 years. There was only one person that could corroborate that. So therefore, Snopes at the end of the article says that because only one person could verify this, they can't call it totally
totally true. How many people do they need to consider it totally verified?
Ask the Black student advocate, because
what's the verification process, and why isn't that one person enough? Especially if he did actions to kind of corroborate that being his feeling.
Well, that right there just goes up under suspicion. But even outside the suspicion, what is the reality today? The reality is that, and I'm talking just a little politics, is that dealing with school districts, Black folks always have to wait. Dealing with politics, Black folks always have to wait. We've been the ones should be on the front of the line to get services and everything. I'm here to echo. Do y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. I can hear you. Let me say something to see if I know where that people's coming from. Okay, go ahead.
Yes.
Okay, so
go ahead, Chris.
A person who has this kind of character that is writing, what we see as Amendment 1964 Civil Rights Act, and then behind closed doors is saying certain things, and then coming out with the 1965 framework for elementary and secondary education, which is, like I told you, ESEA 1965. I am just encouraging you to think of what is their true intention.
Chris, let's jump to today.
Well, yeah, we're getting there. So I'm gonna wrap this part up. And we're gonna talk about now. So again, what you see from that creation of Lyndon Johnson's in 1965 and the formal federal government role in education through the Elementary and Secondary Education Act, now we just see that law and that framework continues to be reauthorized, okay? So it's not new, it just continues to expand, change. It's like an ebb and a flow, okay? So when you saw No Child Left Behind, guess what? It's just like a reauthorization of the Elementary and Secondary Education Act of 1965. When you saw the Every Student Succeeds Act okay, that was put forth in 2015 from Obama's in his race to the top, okay? What you see is a reauthorization, and they even called it an amendment to the 1965 Elementary Secondary Education Act. So that is where we saw the role of government. Now, federal government intervention as far as education and what their role looks like, their defined role didn't come until this actual 1965 Act. When we have Trump, and you can go to the one that is, let me see, under Snopes, says U.S. News.
Okay.
Okay.
So this was basically, it shows that his desire for federal government was, and he signed an executive order in 2017, is to look at the education department and determine where the federal government has unlawfully overstepped state local control. So you guys can look at that whenever you want to, but that is what he came in, and this was supposed to take place, I believe, over a 300-day period of just studying different aspects of education and with federal government involvement. Can take.
You're breaking up again, Christina. Christina, can you hear me? Can you hear me, Jerry?
I can.
Can you hear Christina? Oh yeah, Christina, your signal is low again. All right, Christina, Christina, it shows right here that her signal is low. It looked like she got stuck.
Okay.
Okay, when she comes back, I think it'll unmute her. And she has up this article talking about Donald Trump to order education department to study government overreach. And in the article is talking about, it says, the byline says, the order directs the education department to determine where the federal government has unlawfully overstepped state and local control. And that's what Christina was talking about, is about state overstepping its role. Well, she's showing state came in where the federal government started overstepping its role in state education. All right, Christina, you there?
So can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
I have no idea what is going on. So I have questions. Like I said, I'm here to answer questions. So we have that as the American public school system. I want to show from federal level because that was a question that was brought up, what is the difference and why is it like this? So we didn't even talk about funding because, like I told you, the Title I funding portion of the federal government is included in the Elementary Secondary Education Act. You can look that up and how that has.
I'm sorry, Christina, it's still breaking up.
Chris, say Tyrone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Shoot Chris the link so she can call in.
It's showing that my connection is stable and that you guys are not.
Tyrone.
Yeah, I
was going to tell you, send Chris the link to where she can call in and then just mute her on the video, but you still could see her.
Yeah, I'll just send it. I'll send the I'll text you over the link so we can use the audio from your phone.
Yeah.
Right. Because it's showing that my connection is strong and that you guys. I have no idea what's going on at this point. Send me the link and I'll call it. I want to pull this information.
Right. So did you hear what we're gonna do?
Sure, it says I'm strong right here. I think you guys are. I think you guys are trying to kick me out. No, I'm joking. Yeah, go ahead and send it to me, and I'll call.
You're giving too much good information. All right, here I'm going to send it to you right now. Okay, I just sent you the link. And yeah, you open up there.
My good people, because I'm over here just talking and didn't even know my phone was, or my computer. I had my Bluetooth on at first and was using that to talk. I thought that was a problem, but I guess not.
Yeah, 'cause it was coming in and out. And so I was, there would be times where your clarity was good. And so I'd let it go, but then it just would, it'll just go bad from there.
Yeah, no, let me call in, and you can just put a picture of me up. Held up.
But no, just mute your mic.
Yeah, I'll mute her.
Okay.
Hold on, let's say, guys.
All right, let me see. As soon as I see you pop
Sorry,
in.
let me go ahead until I can get this situated right here.
All right, Jerry. Well, what do you think about the state and federal roles in
so understand what the president main function is to make sure the people are safe. Okay, so when you look at that, you say, how is that now you're going to back up and pull back on the oversight or the guidance that you're going to give to each state?
Hey, okay, I'm
Chris.
here.
Okay,
Yes.
so yeah, that's it right there, Chris. You win it now.
Okay. I'm sorry. So what was not clear that I was saying? I truly apologize for that. And, I want to make sure that I said that clearly.
Okay,
Tyrone,
I'll take the other one off right here in a second. So yeah, I could go back to here. Let me go back to where we were, kind of where we lost you.
Chris, what you was talking about, what Trump was talking about to study to see the oversight for the federal government.
Right here when we brought up this article right here.
So again, what we'll find throughout American history is the battle over what federal control looks like and doesn't look like, okay, with regards to education, educational policies, and systems of education, okay? So I just wanted to make that clear. And because I believe I was having a problem with my computer, I'm just going to ask you to go to the next document. So now we're going to talk about what has been the historical and overarching story of Black people in, the nation. So basically, I had already talked to you guys about 1776, that Northwest Ordinance, and, all the things that were included therein. I talked to you about some other, things. Actually, can you go to the video? I would like to play the video first, and it is the one that has CBS on it.
Okay, let me.
That's the one with Orfield.
You scroll down to the video. You sound much better. We can hear you now.
Okay, next time you guys tell me after so I don't waste my voice for an hour and 20 minutes.
Well, if you were coming, we could hear, but after a while, then when we told you, it was that's when it was getting a little more difficult here.
Okay. So I want people to be paying attention to what they're saying.
All right. Here, let me go ahead and get it started. And while it's showing the ad. And while it's showing the ad, thank you guys for sticking with us while we had a couple difficulties. You guys hit subscribe and
everyone that has hung in there through the technical difficulties.
All right, now we're technically not so difficult anymore. So we are good to go. We're going to share this video here. Let me get the screen pulled up for you. Got the screen pulled up, got the sound right, and the commercial is gone. I'll play it right now, Christina.
Okay.
Oh, and I should unmute it first.
Constitutional. The land.
All right, that was the last.
A new report finds school segregation is on the rise across the United States, even though it has been 65 years since the Supreme Court declared it unconstitutional. The landmark Brown versus Board of Education case ordered schools to start integrating in 1954, launching a movement to help end racial inequality. But according to research conducted by the Civil Rights Project, a series of Supreme Court decisions in the 1990s led to the end of hundreds of desegregation orders and plans across the country. Gary Orfield joins us now from Los Angeles. He is a professor of education, law, political science, and urban planning at UCLA. He is also the co-director of the Civil Rights Project at the university. Gary, good to have you with us.
Good to be with you.
So, Gary, first, if you can explain what happened in the 1990s and how did these rulings affected integration in schools?
So there was a lot of progress especially from the 1960s through the late 1980s. We made the South into the most integrated part of the United States, thanks to court orders and desegregation plans, and we achieved a lot of educational gains. Beginning at the end of the 1980s and early 90s, we began to turn backwards. In 1991, the Supreme Court, in a case from Oklahoma City, said that desegregation was a temporary punishment, not a long-term requirement, and allowed school districts to return to segregated neighborhood schools and actually put pressure on court judges to end desegregation. Ever since that time, segregation's been increasing.
You know, I found this research to be really disappointing and surprising. I wonder, were any of the results surprising to you that after 65 years after Brown versus Board of Education, that school segregation is actually getting worse?
No, it's been getting worse now for over a quarter century. People just aren't paying any attention to it because they don't intend to do anything about it. We really did learn that if you worked on it, you could achieve desegregation and it would have benefits. But there was a tremendous resistance to it. And when the court gave the go-ahead to end the desegregation plans, many places ended them. There were some school districts that wanted to remain desegregated that weren't allowed to by the courts as the courts turned more conservative.
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Charlotte, North Carolina was a good example of that, where the school district actually spent $1 million saying, we're not done yet. We haven't made the schools equal enough yet. And our people like desegregation. And the court ordered them to terminate the plan and reinstate neighborhood schools that were highly segregated and very unequal.
Wow. So based on your research in this study, which racial groups suffer the most from school segregation?
Both African Americans and Latinos nowadays are in schools that are about 3/4 non-white, and they are schools that are unequal in many other respects. African Americans and Latinos are in schools that are overwhelmingly poor. On the other hand, whites and Asians are in schools that are middle class, and whites are in schools that are more than 2/3 whites, even though whites are less than half of the student population of the United States now.
Senator Kamala Harris tweeted Friday, quote, Brown versus Board is personal to me. My class was only the second after busing integrated Berkeley public schools. Of course, busing legislation was debated on and off in the 70s. And as you know, it's the practice of transporting students within or outside their local schools to other schools to try to resolve segregation. What do you make of this approach, and has it actually helped?
It has helped a lot. In fact, powerful new research by Professor Rucker Johnson at Berkeley that shows that it makes a difference in not only how well you do, but how well you do in college, whether you finish, what kind of a job you get, what kind of income you have, and kind of what your health conditions are as adults. When you get connected into the mainstream of the society and get the privileges that come with excellent higher education, your life gets changed. And that relates to being in a school that's competitive, that has experienced teachers and administrators, demanding curriculum, and really gets you to college. Most of our highly segregated, impoverished schools don't do that. And so there's a tragic loss of talent for the country, really dangerous loss.
And so in your opinion, and based on what you've seen, your research and all of this studying, what do you think needs to be done to reverse course to stop the rise of segregation in schools and turn the tide here?
Well, segregation is insidious and it's self-perpetuating. If your parents are segregated and they're inadequately prepared and they earn less, you're going to live in a lesser neighborhood, you're going to go to a lesser school, and you're going to be in the same path. We've got to decide we don't want to end up that way. Then there's many things you could do. And all of the things that we're talking about doing are not forcing students to attend other schools. We're setting up systems of choice that are designed to produce diverse schools and keep them diverse, and to offer better educational options at the same time. There are lots of things that have been done and worked in magnet schools that we could do at a much larger scale.
Do you see any promise on the horizon when it comes to this issue?
Yes, I do see some promise. We have students protesting for desegregation in New York City, which is in the most segregated state in the United States, which is New York. We see a statewide lawsuit for desegregation going on under state law, since the U.S. Supreme Court has shut down federal law. But we see them going on in New Jersey and Minnesota and proceeding in Connecticut as well. Lots of people are interested in doing this. There's some very interesting experiences with two-way immersion schools educating Spanish-speaking and English-speaking students in Texas, for example.
All right, we appreciate your time and your work. Gary Orfield, thank you.
Great to be with you, and I'm glad you're paying attention to this, because we shouldn't celebrate it until we do something to realize its promise.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay.
Okay, so like I just was talking about, some public education framework, now enter the Black person, right? So, I will allow Jerry to talk about a little bit about that, but we see our history starts tumultuous into the public school environment after Brown versus Board of Education overturns Plessy v. Ferguson. And so historically, even in a already kind of scattered, confusing public education system that was already there, the states don't know if the federal government should be controlled, and vice versa, controlling. Now enter the Black person that was just, had no rights to education, that it was basically criminal to educate, and you could be in trouble educating that person, right? Right. And here we are now today. That news from CBS, like I said, I'm not, talking about any political party or anything like that. This isn't that type of conversation. That came out May, which was just how many weeks ago?
Yeah, that was a few weeks ago. I noticed.
It was like the 27th, I think.
Right. Yeah. So we could talk all day about whether the federal government should be involved or the state should be involved. And guess what? You're picking up the same baton they've been arguing about historically, right?
Right.
But what the point of it is looking at what has taken place to us, Black people. That starts at a different point in history, okay? And go ahead, and Jerry, you could chime in on that one.
Okay. So on September 25th, 1957, that's when the Little Rock Nine integrated the school system. So since that date, and prior to that, they were trying to go to school, and the governor for Arkansas put out the Air National Guard to block it. So then the federal government then sent in the 101st to escort the kids to class. So right away, it was a hostile merger, forcing our kids to go to the school or for them to try to accept us in the school. And so what we still see today is still the same hostile environment that our babies go into and that we have to advocate for. But also, again, talking to Chris earlier today, and we talk almost every day, if not 2 or 3 times a day, you have to look at it and say, we're continuing to fight this fight with the school systems on civil rights issues. But when we really need to start looking at, is this a human rights issue? Chris, go ahead with that.
Right. So what we talking about, the overarching narrative of what has taken place with Black people in America, nobody can compare their story to that. Okay. And so, you know, people don't understand that historically, laws have, even when there are laws and certain things on the books, they're not carried out practically. So when I talk to the point of this is a human rights issue, what I'm saying is that there already exists civil rights laws. What are we going to do? Wait 65 years from now to find out if they're going to be actually practiced?
Just because the law is there don't mean it's being practiced and implemented correctly.
Right. So you have these laws that are established, but yet it only on paper, because what we see is the opposite. Okay. And if a whole nation, we're not even talking about the African diaspora worldwide, so we don't even want to go into that. But if a whole nation has proven that it does not have the best interest of us Black Americans, then maybe we're taking it to the wrong people. And that's why Jerry asked me about the UN. Well, you know, that's something I'm not going to touch on with regards to international law. But what I'm saying is, if the precedents that have been established are continually not working, why are you going to go back and then look to those precedents for guidance and help and support? Like as if we do it within this next 5 decades, it's going to actually work this time, right? So what disturbed me about that whole interview was that he said, yes, it's looking promising. Students are protesting. Lawsuits are happening.
Yeah, and he also said they're not changing it because nobody really, really wants to.
Right. So this is what I'm saying. Like, it's a matter of intentions, and it has nothing to do with the ability. It has to do with, again, when we're talking about this gradualistic kind of thing of changing. So it doesn't matter if it happens in 50 years. It doesn't matter if it doesn't. Oh, well, we'll see then. Now, it's disturbing to know that in the 90s that these things, these protections were taken away, right? And now you have the effect or the consequence of seeing schools here in 2019 more segregated than before the laws were on the books. So what that tells you is that it's established in the culture and climate of America. And are we going to continue to go to the same people and ask for help?
They're going to say you already got rights.
They're
going to say it's something already on the books. They're going to say, hurry up and wait, and we'll amend it. But hurry up and wait.
Yeah, because it ain't us waiting. It's them waiting us out. Like,
right.
Oh, you know, right.
And the other thing is, your famous phrase is, it ain't trickling down to the kids.
It ain't trickling down to the kids or the grandkids.
Okay, so Tyrone, so now I am going to throw some money into the mix for maybe 2 or 3 minutes.
Okay.
Now you have a framework to whereas now the fight is school choice, right?
Right.
But when the fight, it's about money. But the other side of it is when you're dealing with this fight about the money, and now you have to whereas you can't go to court and go against the school districts and talking about unfair practices because you can't create competition.
Mm-hmm.
You understand?
Right.
So because where other business do you know that they only allow one business in that industry?
It'll be called a monopoly.
And
Correct.
not just one business, but one that has historically failed the same people, right? So what I would like to know is anywhere else you would be able to fire someone for doing a poor job. Okay. If I go to the store, and I was just talking to you about this today, Jerry, and I purchase some fruit and it's rotten, when I take it home, we're not even going to talk about what kind of fruit it is because I don't need no people getting to know race. But I cut open this piece of fruit and it's rotten. I have the ability and a choice to, one, take it back, and two, not buy that at that place again, right?
Right.
So in every other aspect and arena of our lives, and even for childcare, if you want to pick what church you go to, college acceptance, you name it, then we have options. But when it comes down to this area, K through 12, what we see is egregious acts towards our children. The lack of options. And he talks about the wonderful token integration magnet program, So I've talked to you guys about that before, how I actually benefited from that system of quote unquote district run choice, right? Now those same magnet programs and specialty programs are not offered at an extensive rate. There's no busing and all of these other factors that play into what we used to see. And so if I use the story that 35 years ago, the school that I went to, I was one among very, very few Black students, right? Caught the bus there, went to the magnet school. Do I feel like that afforded me access and opportunity? Yes. I realize that now as an adult, looking back, wondering where were the rest of the kids on the bus? Okay, what happened to them? I went to a private university that's it's a tier 1 university. It has a tier 1 law school at this university. But then I think about it now, where was everybody else, right? So, that looked like me. At that time, I didn't realize it because that was the only system and framework that I knew, and I knew how to operate well in it. But now looking back and thinking forward with regards to what is available for my kids and my grandchildren, I see that the picture is very dismal, but it's right before our eyes.
And Tyrone, also understand when you go against the system that was changed in the 90s, reverted back to local schools like the sister in Ohio, when she used her dad's address and was sending her kids to a better school, she went to prison.
Right.
It's interesting that you brought that up because I was just talking to someone about the report that came out, with Governor Newsom, and one of the items on the report, and this report just came out, so we still have yet to see what the ramifications are. One of the items on the report that apparently was a part of the agreement was something that is already kind of an existing law with regards to when children leave the district still gets to have a year's worth of their funding, right? So you can't hey, your kid can go, but we're still getting paid for a year, okay? And want to talk about that. If we did exactly what you're talking about, that boundary jumping or whatever to give our kids a better education and lied and said, hey, you know what? I live here, but I really don't. That's a felony.
Right.
But it's okay for the district to collect money and our kid ain't even in the district no more.
Right. Is this the story that you're talking about right here?
It has happened actually more than one time.
Yeah, because I saw another one in 2011 in Ohio. It says this mom went to prison for enrolling her son in a school outside her district, and she went to prison.
Yes.
So it'd have been better if she was able to just pay for her kids to go to, if she would have just cheated like that.
There's actually a situation where I believe someone got 5 years of time.
That was her. Yeah, that's the story I'm talking about.
Right. And so I've read through these situations and it's tragic. But if I move, okay, like legally move, and because they had an expectation without warning that my kid was going to go there, they can get an exemption to get that funding. Well, wait, but the kid's not in your district, but you want to imprison and fine the parents that are really seeking a better education for their child. So, and I'm not condoning crime. Don't hear me saying that because I don't want nobody calling me saying this. You told me that this was how we built equity. No, that's not what I'm doing. I'm just giving perspectives about it. What has happened. There have been people that have also been fined like $75,000 and a felony because of this subject that Jerry brought up. Right. So, I want to hear from the public, before we talk about anything else, does it seem promising what he said the plans were for the future of education and for our kids?
Yeah, I don't think it seems that promising. And I'm looking at it now. She got 5 years. I'm okay. Go ahead, Jerry.
I mean, so let's understand the game. She got 5 years for her kid, trying to get a better education for her kid in the public school setting. On the other side of school choice, you have kids getting recruited.
Right.
From bad neighborhoods, offered scholarships, being able to live with the coach, and all these other things. Think about it.
There's a lot. If people go to board meetings and pay attention to what gets funded, you will find out a lot of things that are questionable. And to me, and this is Christina Laster's opinion, not affiliated with any organization. To me, it is criminal.
It is.
It's hypocrisy, definitely at its finest. This is hypocrisy all day long.
Well, the school systems, I'll say it again, school districts are some of the largest criminal organizations going on, because that same sister who went to jail for sending her baby to that district, I bet you could go back and look at their money, and money that came in earmarked for one line item. They wrote 7 to 12 words and changed that money and moved that money to another bucket. And that's how districts work. And districts want to hold our kids and want to charge them with the smallest things, but they have corruption and also bad leadership and move money and do everything at the top, but want to charge the student for no integrity and for lying to leadership.
Okay, let me ask you guys this just so I'm clear. So a school could go out and could recruit a child out of the district for whatever type of program it wants.
If it's a private school, you'll have private schools.
Okay, so private schools could go out and recruit students if they want. they could go recruit particular students, but a student can't recruit a school district?
Well,
yeah, you can
it's zoned by where you live.
transfer. Okay, so you can apply for a out of district transfer, different things like that, magnet or what they district quote unquote choice programs. But basically, it's one of those things where hurry up and wait. Okay, so fill out this application and good luck getting in. Good luck.
And I know of a district here in Riverside County that every parent that was coming in asking for a transfer, they were denying it.
Yes.
Money. They don't want to give up that money.
So
they give them to the good athletes.
No, it's two different things. I'm talking about public school and parents saying, the school, you can't keep my baby safe. I heard about all the violence and the bad education going on in the school. So I want to get an inter-district transfer, or I want to go to another district transfer, and they're denying it.
So it's just another way to keep the child trapped in a failing school. And so, really, first of all, we cannot remove the history of Black Americans from this scenario. You just can't do it. I mean, you can talk about money any day, okay, whatever. But we're talking about the history and the treatment of Black Americans, the intentions of created laws, and the actual practice of carrying them out. And I want to know if people see that the civil rights laws have failed us. How do you think you're going to go sit in a parent meeting, an African parent meeting, and gain something through collaboration?
Oh, you talk about AIPAC.
Oh, am I? Look, I don't, you be name dropping. I don't always do that. So, so AIPAC, for people who don't know, is African American Parent Advisory Council. Right.
Okay. So let me give you some backstory. So the same time LBJ came out with ESSA, and he said Title I parents should be involved in their child's education. And when you say Title I, that's dealing with free lunch and things like that, economics.
Okay.
So in 1994, President Clinton signed a bill that said 1% of Title I money is supposed to be used for parent engagement, parent involvement. So now you see a lot of districts, especially here in Southern California, popping up and saying, hey, we're going to start an African American Parent Advisory Council. Because now they're saying we're going to use that money. But the question is, what have you been doing with the money for the past 20 years?
And I always say, because I don't like calling it a proposal because I ain't getting married to people that we're not gonna use that terminology because proposals could lead to bad situations on sometimes. So here's the thing: what has been recommended, let's call it that, not proposed, is that the parents give it time. And you're just a first year AIPAC, and let's just wait and see what happens during the second year of AIPAC. And so my question back to the parents that are sitting there waiting is, okay, you guys just formed this council, but how long have they had your kids?
Forever. Right. The whole time they've been in school.
Right. So the kids are in an educational environment. So why are you working gradually to basically integrate the cultural proficiency, the education that is necessary for them through the parent advisory group, right? The kids been there. They're not new.
It's like
and enrolled them, and on the packet said, "Why are you enrolling my kid today? Please form an AIPAC."
It's like you guys said, for black people and black children, it's always hurry up and wait. And the solution is just wait a little while longer. But like you're saying, why do you always have to wait if your kids have already been there so long?
Well, no, what I'm saying is a little bit deeper than that. What I'm trying to get you guys to understand is what is the wait for? What is the expectation of the wait? Okay. What are we expecting to change when the precedent, remember we talked about that before, has already been established for Black Americans in this nation? So what is it that we are expecting? I would like to know, what is it that you're expecting?
Well, parents are expecting their kids to be able to go into a safe environment, a loving environment, to be able to sit in the front of the class and not sit in the back, to be able, and again, I'm gonna go off that list you sent me.
You're gonna go off the list?
Yeah, but again, because parents, they just want and send their kids in not knowing the system. And they don't learn the system till it's time to fight. You know, right. So what you're saying is that the infrastructure, the institution has already been set up to dog or disrespect the Black student because it wasn't built for them in the first place, and they were injected into it in 1957.
So what I'm asking is, do we expect that these laws are going to be practically carried out? And then what's the return time on that? When's that going to happen?
Well, I would say I wouldn't expect it because, like you said, the precedence has already been set. And so since it's been set, what's going to make it change? It's not going to just change on its own. And waiting on it isn't going to change. So the timetable, I would say, is look at the timetable that's already been set.
So when we talk about things moving in a progressive, forward change kind of, dynamic, sometimes that will require setting a new precedent. And I'm just letting you know, like, what are we? Because we can't depend on waiting for more things to be added to the books. We can't depend on waiting for gradualism to finally trickle. Listen, Yolanda Adams said, even me. Okay, let some of that drops fall on even me. Okay, and what I want to say, and that was a song she sang. I'm just letting you know. What I'm saying is that I would like to know, when is it even me, even your kid, even your grandkids? So are our children then expected to be having this fight in 2030?
Okay, how do we set our own precedents?
Well, let me say this right here. I posted this on Facebook earlier. Say many people are posting about hashtag when they see us, and we must also watch when they teach us, hashtag when they teach us, and hashtag how they treat us to stop the preschool to prison pipeline.
So you're saying we need to be paying attention to that stuff too. It's just as important.
Well, because understand is the real question is, when people see the documentary, when they see us, are you going to be emotional enough to make changes? Are you going to be emotional enough to get involved? Are you going to be emotional enough now to train your child at home, okay, to read and do other things at home? We just can't get emotional about a documentary. What are we going to do? What action is going to come out of that? Because many times we send our kids to school, when they come home, now you got to deprogram them. And I asked a question earlier also on Facebook, which is worse, miseducation or ignorance? Which one most?
Well, can you go to the Forbes article, the Forbes article?
Miseducation or ignorance, Jerry? You gave me something to think about. I want to say miseducation because ignorance, it seems like you could fix with some correct education. But miseducation, you got to unlearn first.
Okay. I mean, again, it's your...
If I get into it, you gonna
I really have to think about it though. That's just the first thing come to mind. But that's not an easy question. That's something I have to think about.
Think about it as one is a heart condition, okay, and the other one is a lack of knowledge.
Yeah, ignorance is a lack of knowledge, right? And miseducation, you would say, is a heart issue.
So let me put it like this: you don't get any leniency for ignorance to the law. So if you go out and you do something, okay, and you say, well, wait a minute, I didn't know that I wasn't supposed to do that. I didn't know I was breaking the law. Guess what? It don't matter. You get no leniency for that. So again, one is a heart condition and the other one is a lack of knowledge, right? So you can inform people and they can become educated. The more information they get and be able to apply that practically, then they become more informed. And people particularly when as becoming informed would want to know more information, right?
Okay. So now let's look. I'm gonna throw just something else in there, Tyrone, while you pull up that article.
I got it. I was just listening. I'm already ready. Go ahead.
I mean, so what did my guy from Arrested Development say? Said people come out more ignorant than they went in.
Yeah.
So you have these institutions where our kids go to school or go to college and universities, and they still training them and giving them information that's false. You'll find more information many times to make you think that's on social media if you research it deep enough to get the truth.
Okay. The only thing I was thinking, when it comes to miseducation and ignorance, I find sometimes an ignorant person will learn something correctly faster than somebody who's miseducated, because somebody who is miseducated always feels as if they're educated. So sometimes somebody who's miseducated sometimes it's more difficult to deal with than somebody who is ignorant. An ignorant person still may have a thirst to know, but somebody who is miseducated, you can't really tell somebody who's miseducated they're miseducated, because they're going to tell you you're miseducated. So that was
right. So when I talk about this subject matter, Jerry uses those terms, but I use the term between the foolish and the wise. Okay. So, and wisdom, yes, you can apply knowledge to wisdom to help strengthen that, but it doesn't mean you have to be very, very, very knowledgeable to be wise, right? We see that all the time, and people use terms like the expression, "Oh, that person has more book sense than common sense," right?
Right.
So those are things that I like to start people to challenge themselves in thinking when they hear certain words. Now, this article from Forbes, okay, which came out in March. Are you able to expand that?
Yes.
What does it say? This is March of this year, guys. This year. The achievement gap hasn't budged in 50 years. Now what?
Oh, wow.
Okay. What is Forbes? Does anybody know what Forbes typically reports on and things like that?
Money. Wealth.
So why are they worried about the achievement gap, which I call the access and opportunity gap? So what I'm saying is that these things directly affect our society, our economy, our community, and they're detrimental to all of those things. I can't dig deep into that sociological study, and I cannot dig deep. So I'm just basically touching on things. I can't really dig deep into the economy side of it, okay? But I want you to know that Forbes is sitting here telling you that, hey, the achievement gap, which we call the access and opportunity gap, it hasn't budged in 50 years. But then you have the districts reporting that they're closing in on the achievement gap. Who are you going to trust, the districts or the economies? I don't know. You answer that, Jerry. I can't.
No, you got to trust the economists. And again, Forbes is recognized worldwide for knowing the numbers and knowing the money. So then the other thing is you got to ask yourself a simple question then. If the schools, public schools, have not changed or advanced the gap in 50 years, why wouldn't the NAACP, the Urban League, NAN, all the Black organizations say, let's look at something else and give our kids another shot at something else? Because it goes back to say, or the question is, really, well, I'm not going to ask a question. I'm going to say we have everything to lose by continuing to go to the same system.
You know, I could say that the Urban League and NAN has definitely made a public proclamation. And again, I don't speak on behalf of them. I just know from
but what I'm saying is I know they have also.
I can say that they've moved into that direction as they
Correct.
have made a public proclamation with regards to parents having the right to choose and having quality public school options, because we don't want our children locked into bad and failing historically tragic American systems that don't really, offer opportunity and access. So when we looked at that Forbes, I want to bring this up. Okay, they went on to say the economists don't know how to solve the problem. The scholars can't solve the problem. Apparently lawmakers can't solve the problem. And a lot of people are putting their hope into these people to solve the problem.
Right.
So this is why I bring this information, because I am not here to give everybody the answer. They don't even have to figure it out, right? What I am saying is, your child, you make the choice. They don't get another chance.
Right.
This right here shows how the disparity creates the basically climate of which they will operate in adulthood, right? So, of course, as Black Americans, like I said, our story is like no other, okay? We're not going to even go any deeper into that story, because we typically say, well, you know what, we were enslaved by white Americans, and then you open up the books and that's what they talk about as far as Black American history go. But there was a lot of other people with their hand in the slave trade.
Mm-hmm.
So you have all these contentions, and what it creates with us is that we try to trust in systems and have a dependency on government that has not traditionally been there to support us in census.
Okay.
So it goes directly back to what the quote unquote truth or not what LBJ said.
I mean, based on the other statements that they were able to confirm, I believe that he in fact did make that statement.
Yeah, that's what I was saying. Based on other things that he's done, it kind of lines up. What would you say that we need to do to kind of change the precedent so we don't have to just keep worrying about the same cycles to never trickle down?
I think when parents see a problem and it's going to exist, then you have the option. Don't feel trapped to choose something else. Okay, so when you have the option, I mean, the CBS report just said in 1990s, segregation, the laws on the books was basically not supported at the 1990s. And so now we find 65 years later, the same thing happening or worse. So then my question would be back at you. What, you want to keep sending your kid to that same place?
No, I wouldn't, me personally. So no, and it's something I've heard.
The power comes from every person knowing their rights, making informed decisions, knowing, what's best for their child, and stop depending on, you can't walk. Okay, so let me just explain this in regular terminology. Please do not call the district on Monday saying, hey, I heard that you guys are not closing in and the achievement gap has not budged for 50 years. And what do you think I should do with my kid?
They gonna say bring them
September. Bring them back in September.
They gonna say bring them back, and please don't call back with any more concerns either.
We gonna send them to literacy camp just so you know. Okay, so this is what I'm saying. It has become a dependency that we have to move away from, and we have to start really looking into what our options are. Okay, I gave the story that 12 years ago, some things happened with my now adult daughter that I didn't like. And because I was an educator for 13 years, I knew how to educate my own kids, okay? It wasn't as hard as what people think. So guess what? I disenrolled my daughter from the district, and I used the charter school network to get the curriculum and homeschool my daughter, who then also did a hybrid independent studies program and on the computer. And then my other daughter, because of her situations and circumstances of her becoming a parent at 16, she graduated from virtual online platform, and that supported her in being able to, for one, not having to go to a continuation school, and for two, not having to drop out because of her life's decisions, but being able to redeem herself, get a high school diploma. And the program wasn't easy, but she was very good at computer programs anyway, and how that looks like. Interestingly enough, when I saw her going through that program to get her high school diploma and graduate, it reminded me of online platforms for college, right? So it was preparing her for such a time as that. Then we have my other child, who I did homeschool for a period of time as well. And my dad that I always talk about, he was, a parent of 7 children and homeschooled 4 of them, and they all have a master's degree. One has a PhD. I have my master's degree, and so does my sister. It's all 7 of us, okay? And so when we talk about our concern for education, we realize we are very concerned about the education of our children. But to just say that and do nothing and to expect for someone to come along and fix it is a misunderstanding at best. I hope a misunderstanding. I hope we don't call it ignorance or miseducation, right?
Right. Right.
Foolishness versus wisdom. But, really, also, let's look at it from the aspect of what we're talking about with this school to prison pipeline. And Christina doesn't have all the answers that the economists, politicians, and lawmakers and everybody else of the sorts are trying to get their hands around too. If you guys can come up with that answer, I'm sure they pay you really. Okay, and you can give them the answer. You guys sign your lovely contract, sign it with Forbes, sign it with the Wall Street Journal, and have a happy life. However, what I'm saying is that you as the parents or grandparents need to know what is best and choose from that. And I can't tell you to know what is best and then deny the history and the practices of what has happened with Black Americans. You can't do that. Unless you're not Black, and you don't have nothing to,
Christine, please explain so people will know the difference between public and private school, so they won't be out thinking that their kid is getting something they're not.
Okay, so the private school sector, we usually typically see as some, they have like Montessori kind of influenced schools, which is fine if a person wants to pay for that. Private schools such as religious-based schools. So say, for instance, just throwing out an organization because I don't even, I'm not stating this as fact, but say, for instance, Calvary Chapel or Catholic Charities has a chain of schools, okay? You can elect to pay for them to provide education to your child. It's up to you. If you have the ability to pay them, then you can take them to one of their schools. I mean, that's just the fact. Public schools is paid for by public funding, therefore it is free.
Okay.
But when we had to have a whole nother day of conversation about that public funding, boy, and it going into the school system.
Well, speak on where you said choice. When people say public choice, what's the different line items for choice? Give them 3 or 4 of them.
Okay, so when we're talking about what is available for free in a public school, yes, we're talking about district schools, traditional public district run schools, and we're talking about free public charter schools because they're not private, not in California, and we are talking about also the ability to homeschool. Okay, so when you talk about choice, you can include private, public, you homeschool. A lot of homeschool moms depend on charter school networks for their curriculum, and their child is registered there and they meet with teachers and whatever, they get to cater their programs. That's public. That is under the public education system, and it is paid. You don't have to pay. The only thing that you would have to pay for is if you're a homeschool mom and you want to, just develop your own program that is not offered under one of the networks. So you would have to pay for your child's curriculum. So say, for instance, I want to enter my granddaughter into homeschool, and it's a public charter school that I use as far as my curriculum. And I say, hey, I don't want to use XYZ. I'd rather use Hooked on Phonics, right? Now, and I'm just speaking in hypotheticals here, okay? Now, if they don't have that ability to fund the Hooked on Phonics because it's not accredited, curriculum-based, whatever, then guess what? I, as the parent, will go buy the Hooked on Phonics for my grandchild, okay? That's where there's a differentiation. But even if you are in a district school and you see that your child is not reading adequately, and you say, hey, I want Hooked on Phonics, you can't go to them and ask for it either, right?
It's the same concept. You have to put your own into it.
With the private schools, and again, I don't know if people realize that private schools offer scholarships. Okay, if that's an area where you would like to look at your options, you can look into that. Some of them do have scholarships and financial aid available. I'm not talking about loans and things like that. I'm talking about a package that they will pay for your child. And a lot of people don't even tap into that area. So that's private school. That is not, it's accredited school. Make sure that if you choose a private school that it's accredited. Then yeah, of course, you don't want to be paid for something that,
no accreditation anywhere. It doesn't work.
I didn't know Uncle Joey owned the school, and now we over here trying to figure out how we gonna graduate. No, we're not talking about that. We're talking about making informed decisions. So that's what that looks like. Did I make that clear, or is there any more questions on that?
No, that's very clear. Can I ask you real quick about homeschooling? Is homeschooling difficult to do? Because a lot of people seem like they don't want to do it because they're intimidated by it. How intimidating is it?
You know what? It's not intimidating at all. As a matter of fact, children have this natural desire to be learners in practice. What I say is, not just sitting there with a book and a pencil all day. They want to actually be moving around and learning in their environments. And I found that as a homeschool mom, I was actually able to make the curriculum come to life by allowing my children to apply it to everyday living. So when we talked about measurements, guess what? We did a cooking, kind of deal. Like, it's cooking day. We're talking about measurements, halves, quarters, wholes, whatever. So if we talked about, coming up with scientific hypothesis, I took my children out and let's discover what that actually looks like. And that kind of information actually stuck with them a lot longer than anything that, it's kind of like college. You cram it for to get your final done, or you get your stuff done. But how much did you really remember?
Right. Okay. And it's about a learning process and which way that you learn the best.
Right. And so that's why I don't, like I said, it was stated that we didn't give any answers. Well, because then that would create a dependency on me to give the person the answers, when I am saying it's the parents' right to choose quality public education for their children and to not have their children stuck in failing schools. And for the Black American, you can turn to every place that you want to and find that happening under the public district framework. And it's undeniable.
Okay, so you're saying you could
compulsory
customize
education. Compulsory education.
That's that forced integration plus compulsory education we talking about, Jerry.
Right.
And what you're recommending is for parents to customize the education for your child. Do what's best for your child.
That's what they could do. And again, I gave an article on there that talked about Black people in general and learning styles and what we did when we weren't allowed to have an education. Yet, there were whole communities and societies that, and you guys can look at that later because I know we're running a little bit over on the time.
Was it the continued miseducation of Black Americans?
No, it's the PBS article. So if you want to turn to that really quick.
Okay. The PBS article.
Okay, so what do you have under the continued?
The continued miseducation. Let me show you that. That's an article from New America. Right, I don't see the PBS.
That's deep. Okay, so let's go over. No. Okay, so go to the
next. Not that one.
Go to the next one.
Okay.
And, there's a lot of sources of data that I can also share with people. Like I said, for the interest of time, I basically gave what was, some of the foundational documentation so that people would actually go back and research this information. I'm sorry, it's getting hot over here. So let me plug in my, okay. I got my, okay, we there? Okay, we good. Okay.
Here, let me see. This one right here?
Right. Let me see. Hold on. Wait. It's cut. No, that's not it either. Okay, so keep going. I'm sorry. And see, because if I sat here and told you that, people are trying to monopolize, and then I tell you everything to do, then guess what I become?
The school district.
Yeah.
I'm not a hypocrite. So when I say that the parents should have the right to choose, and I will help you choose, but I'm not saying that I'm going to tell you what to choose. Okay, I'm not going to do that.
Well, you should want to pick what's best for your children anyway, and it seems like the parent will know what's best for the children.
That should come natural. In this term, you guys, for IU dictionary lovers and psychology lovers, I'm going to give you a term, and I want you to look it up at a later date, because again, that would take a whole nother show. That's it right there. No, wait. Yes, that's it right there. So, if you can expand that.
All right.
Okay, and I can't see it, so I don't know who can read it because again, my computer was failing us today, so we gotta check it out later. So here we have on PBS. I believe that's the PBS resource, right?
Yes. I see PBS logo at the top. It says 13 Media with Impact, and then it says PBS.
Okay, so go ahead and go down. We're talking about education, arts, and culture. Jerry, can you see it? Because I can't really see it, and I'm not able to read it. Okay, there was something very important. Huh?
What first column or second column?
Okay, so keep going. Okay, so there we go. The second sentence, concerned that literate slaves would forge passes to convince other slaves to revolt. Southern stakeholders generally opposed. Oh, you're going too fast. What happened?
Oh, you know what? We have a little delay. I'm probably way under you. Let me scroll up there. I would imagine.
Okay. So anyway, we get the picture that, so generally opposed slave literacy. Okay. So look at the dates again. In 1740, and I can't read.
South Carolina enacted another response to the events that occurred at Stonewall by passing one of the earliest laws prohibiting teaching a slave to read or write. In other parts of the South, the mid-18th century saw an expansion of earlier laws forbidding the education of slaves. Still, there was some tolerance for slave education among certain groups in the South. In 1743, for instance, Anglican ministers established a school for slaves in South Carolina. For over 20 years, the school offered instruction to Christian religion and education under the guidance of a slave schoolmaster.
Keep going.
Okay. Tyrone, can you raise up? Okay.
There you go.
In the absence of formal education, slaves in both the rural and urban South often found alternative paths to learning. On plantations, the pursuit of education became communal effort. Slaves learned from parents, spouses, family members, and fellow slaves, and some were even personally instructed by their masters or hired tutors. Slaveholders were motivated by Christian conventions to enable Bible reading among slaves and even established informal plantation schools on occasion, in part because of slave owners' practical need for literate slaves to perform tasks such as record keeping.
Okay.
Keep going.
Yes, this is the whole article. We'll wrap up with this one.
Okay. So basically, what I hear them saying is we're okay with slaves.
Can you finish? Is it done?
Okay, Tyrone, slide down a little bit. Slide it back up a little bit.
All right.
Okay, right there we go. In the North, where black education was not forbidden, African Americans had greater access to formal schooling and were more likely to have basic reading and writing skills than Southern blacks. Quakers played an important part of elevating literacy rates among Northern blacks by rigorously promoting education programs in the years before and after the Revolutionary War. By 1860, less than 8% of black Bostonians were literate, while only an estimate of 5% of the overall African American population could read. Of course, the right to literacy did not ensure instruction in the antebellum North. Black schools struggled to stay afloat under constant financial hardship and lack of white support.
Okay, so that you guys get the gist of it, and you see the data. You see the data on that about people that could read. Now, remember, we were just talking about 80% of black students,
right,
do math.
So back when it was prohibited, blacks were literate, and now where they can get education, only 20% are at grade level. So since in 200 years or 300 years, you're talking a 15% increase.
Wow.
That's what you want to call it, because we can't just look at the reading factor, right? We got to look at the math factor. We got to look at the graduation rate. And what's interesting to me, and we were having this conversation earlier, is that if we look at the feeder schools, the district.
Okay, stop, Chris. Okay, everyone, stop what you're doing. Listen to this, because this is really going to defunct and also debunk all the nonsense that these school districts put out. So this is disclaimer. Understand what you put in is what you get out. Go ahead.
Okay, so everybody knows that goes to a traditional district high school that they came from a feeder school like the middle school and the elementary school. So, you know, when you go to the elementary school and if you live in that community, whatever, you have to go specifically to a certain middle school, and then you have to specifically go to a certain high school. Mm-hmm. Now, if you look on the California dashboard, and the CASP, and it's not funny. I mean, I just, you know, boggles my brain. But I don't think it'll boggle you guys because I know you're very smart. So if you look at the California dashboard, those feeder elementary schools are reporting and that our students are in the red and the orange when it comes to English language arts and math. Also, we're not talking about punishment and absenteeism, but that's red and orange too. Some maybe if you're lucky is yellow. Talking about Black students. Then you get to middle school, that feeder middle school. Guess what? The colors didn't change, right? So that means that the kids are not even meeting the standards when it comes to things. And a lot of people try to have the debate, oh, well, you know, it's because they're teaching the test and they're not to whatever. We see the dynamic that our children are not even at the standard level from the feeder elementary school to the middle school. And then all of a sudden, they are in the blue and the green for college and career readiness and graduation rate. How does that happen?
Are they just boosting it for
You know what? I'm just bringing the information, okay? You can go to California dashboard and look at exactly what I'm talking about. A lot of people need to understand that when they're looking at these dashboards, you have to disaggregate the data to Black students as a part of the population, right? So if you look at the data in total, then you're going to see the performance. But then when you disaggregate the Black students from that, it's all the same.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, I got you. And I wanted to show what the dashboard looked like if somebody hadn't seen
so I'm
it.
going to need some people to go to the California dashboard and look at exactly what I said. So also, if you are reading your the CASP scores, which is another tool mechanism for gauging, you know, the English language arts literacy, what you want to call it, and also math, you will see a very dismal picture as well. But yet these kids that are not getting properly educated in elementary all the way to middle school, then all of a sudden are 90% graduation. I mean, how does that happen?
So that's that. I mean, I'm not asking you to give the answer because I'm sure there's experts out here trying to figure out the answer to that.
I don't think it takes an expert or a rocket scientist to figure that out, but it's going to take a rocket scientist to catch me when I start flying away from this place.
It's going to take somebody to be honest about it because that doesn't make any sense when you look at the numbers. How do they drastically increase when it's time for college? Go ahead, Jerry.
Tyrone, now look at this right here. So this is the graph that I put together. So let me know when you can see it.
I can see it.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what this
is, Jerry. I know what that is.
Basically what this is, is this graph is Palm Springs, and you only have 17% of your Black students college and career ready. And so what you have here is the Black is the graduation, college career readiness, and the orange are kids with no skill set, which represent preschool to prison pipeline.
And how many of them actually graduated?
So look at it.
Wow, so 17% are college prepared in Palm Springs?
I mean, it's college and career ready. Okay, so
right, correct. So basically they're graduating with no skill set.
Right, and no knowledge.
Wow. So the majority of the children are graduating with no skill set and no knowledge.
Correct.
And then that puts them right in place for the to the prison pipeline, the school to prison
There you
pipeline.
go.
Okay.
There you go.
And here's the dynamic, because Palm Springs, that's a part of Riverside County, right? That's not,
Yes.
that's not the deal.
Yes, that's Riverside County.
Right. So, because, you know, I think of in terms as the Inland Empire. I just seen another article about the Inland Empire doing so dismal just today. We'll talk about that another day. I put it on my Facebook page for all of you that want to look at that. If you're so intrigued by this wonderful Californian dream and what that looks like, right? So let's talk about Riverside County real quick. Typically, what you'll have is that 1 in every 3 persons in the home will go on to receive a higher education. But in Riverside County, that's 1 in every 5. Those are just people outside of race, bringing in the race component. Again, we have to disaggregate what is happening with Black Americans to see the true picture. And I'm sure that if you know, I'm just going to put it like this.
The gap widens when it comes to Black people more than 1 to 5.
Yeah, and you know, Grandma used to sing in that old storefront church. I just want to be counted in that number, right? So
in that number.
And, you know, and we learned this little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. But I mean,
oh, I want to be when the Saints go marching in. I want to be in that number.
Well, but really, seriously, that's like our kids cry every day.
When they go marching into college, I want to be part of that. I want to be in that number.
Exactly. And so I use that as an expression, you know, because, you know, we know as a people, we have used the artist's song and poetry to express our true emotions. And yes, it's true. I want to be counted when the Saints go marching in, but that's how our kids feel every day. I want to be counted too.
Okay. I have a question. Somebody asked about a school district before as a transfer. What do you do if the district you would like to transfer your child to don't accept the transfer?
There ain't nothing you can do. I mean, you can appeal it, but first of all, some districts have a clause or whatever is part of their policies that they won't even release your kid.
All right. Well, you breaking up again. We caught it fast this time.
Okay. Chris, you want to repeat that?
So basically, you can appeal it, but it doesn't. Typically, what I've seen, and I want to make this disclaimer: me and Jerry have dealt with so many situations. We always look at the commonalities across all of them, and so this is based off of documentation, record, and experiences. And we've talked about this before about me and him collaborating on that. And so here's the thing about the district transfers. What I've noticed is that parents will try to appeal those things, but they find small issues like, oh, your kid had a behavior report or a behavior record, so now we're denying it based on that. Also, the district that you're in may have a policy that they do not release the students.
They could do that, not release a student, and because they want to keep that money. Is that why? Or am I speculating out loud? That just
well, it could be many reasons. So, but understand this right here. Let me say this right here, which is fact. If Paris Elementary School District continues to lose kids at the rate that they left last year, in 5 years, they won't be solvent because of the ADA money, which is the money they get for kids attending every day. So then from that, people who are watching this video can take that any kind of way.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I know how I took it.
It's not up to our children to be locked into failing school systems to resolve their fiscal insolvency issues. That's
right.
a adult problem, and it shouldn't be done on the back of our kids.
And so who didn't hear that, Chris just said, it's not our kids' problem to continue to go to failing schools because of bad management of the fiscal, of the money through the years.
All right.
So our kids are not, we're not keeping our kids trapped in failing systems just to solve fiscal and budget problems. No.
That should be up to them. They should want to fix that. Like you guys said, that's why it's like it's like a crime family. They can do whatever they want.
It's one of the largest criminal organizations we got in the country.
And they don't have to fix nothing.
We're not even going to go into this fiscal insolvency issue because that is a whole nother level. Like I said, talking about the finances, the resources, the equity and resource funding, and also we would have to additionally talk about the union and pension plans that are part of that fiscal package. And our kids, we're not trying to solve someone's bad retirement deals, okay?
And they shouldn't be used to help with the bad retirement deals.
Right. And so you're not going to use the kids to do that. And I'm going to figure out my internet issue for next time starting again. You're not going to use the kids to do that and then say, oh, well, it's so sad. You didn't get educated. Figure it out in 50 more years.
Okay. I got another question too. Somebody wants to know, how do you know when to transfer your child? What if you're not sure if it's the school or the actual student?
Okay, well, first thing is look at your kid based on how old your kid is. What has happened in the kid over the last couple semesters? If they're in the same school, it could be the teacher, it could be the student, but you need to know and look and see what's common. You know, so if your son or child is coming home, your student, and saying my teacher don't like me, now your child could begin disenchanted with education because of treatment in the class.
Can you show that picture while we talking to answering this parent's questions? I attached the picture to the document. Can you show that real quick?
Okay.
What oppression looks like?
What oppression looks like in school.
In the classroom.
Right. And this was done by educators. I actually worked, like I told you guys before, the majority of our Black educators are not going to deny what we're talking about here.
Okay, I have it up.
Okay, so where does oppression hide in school? And if someone can read that again because I can't see it.
Where does oppression hide in schools? Decorations, grading expectations, discipline policies, curriculum, recess habits, adult-student relationships, relationship with families, communication, community traditions, classroom culture, seating arrangements, and classroom procedures.
That's very interesting, too. Right. Where does oppression hide in our schools?
Right. So the parents' question, really, I would try to admonish every parent that sees their kid struggling, especially if you wait 2 years to make that decision, they're a much greater deficit, right? So when you see that your child is 6 months behind, that, remember we talking about what access and opportunity gap are we working off of? The 286 years, 1865, 19, what? So you don't want to let your child become 2 extra years behind when you could have done something. So, okay, and then we have, of course, the aspiring students that do have good grades, but then have these behavior or attention-seeking things because they're being stigmatized, labeled, you name it, excessively harshly punished in the educational environment, and they're looking for a way to out. Then we have the students that are having anxiety issues where they're nail biting, they're pulling their hair out, they're you name it. So you have to know your kid well enough to know, are they thriving or barely surviving?
Okay.
And Tyrone, something else. I was in an IEP last week, and I know because we called them and I asked them questions, right away the school said, oh, we can offer compensatory tutoring over the summer. because they know they didn't do what they're supposed to do with their kid during the regular school year.
Right.
Okay.
So then you
So that was their band-aid to it.
Yeah.
But my point is that okay, after they get the compensatory education, the pattern is not going to change. So
Right.
like I always said before, do you really think you can change the behavior and the pattern of institutionalized system of oppression and racism? I mean, it is what it is.
Okay.
So going to an IEP and demanding that they follow federal, state, and federal and state guidelines surrounding disability, which let's mention that idea, also came out in, I believe, 1965, along with other things. I have to check the data on that. You guys can do some data diving and help me with that. But what I'm saying to you is that these things already exist. And what has typically happened to Black Americans is that there are laws that are supposed to protect us and help us, but they haven't been carried out.
Right.
So how long are you're gonna fight that in an environment that might be hostile for your kid or you?
It's time to fight back as soon as you notice it, because obviously it's not going to change just because you hope it's going to change. And like I said, and like you alluded to, there are already laws there, but that don't mean that it works.
So you, the parent, need to be aware of what next and look for a viable option that is actually, look at the scores like I'm telling you, see they're meeting their standards, especially in the area of English language, or I'm sorry, language arts. I consider another category as under acronyms, so that's why I said that. And then math. Look at the absenteeism rate. Look at the suspension rate. Ask for, what are they exceeding mastery?
Okay. So you got to look at the different dynamics of the school and measure them all before you make a different decision about a school. Like you said, the suspension rate, the graduation rate, look at their academic scores, the behavioral things that are going on in the school. Be proactive with your information.
Right, but what I'm saying to Black parents is you can't just look at the entire student population. I'm going to need you guys to disaggregate that data to your to Black students, okay? So if you have a school that has 2.2% Black students, but suspends their students at a 17% rate, you want to see your kid there?
And not only that, I would tell parents that you have to go to the school and hang around the school and then walk up to some parents and do your own market research as to what's going on.
Yes.
Because believe me, parents believe in telling how they've been treated and what's going on with their babies.
Right. And so, and again, it's more parents being involved and being proactive.
And so some people need to think outside of the box too. If it didn't work for your grandparents or your great grandparents, okay, all right, we're thinking outside the box. It ain't gonna happen. I'm just saying, like, it's time to look into a different arena, which is okay. It's okay if you're a little bit apprehensive about something that you've never done before or seen done before.
Here, let me ask this question before we because I don't want to skip it. Betty says, why do I have to pay for summer school? So I guess she has to pay for her child to go to summer school at a public school, I would guess.
Right, because again, that's one of those things where programs have been cut under the guise of fiscal insolvency, and summer school has been a lost part of the system in many cases. So children aren't particularly failing, so we can't say we're sending them to summer school because they're failing. What is simply we see is these literacy camps and things like that are a form of intervention. And sometimes if they're not offered, just like busing, if you want it, hey, you're gonna pay $375 per 6 months for the busing.
Right. So it becomes an expenditure because they're saying that they're losing money elsewhere. So now you got to pay.
Just like field trips, we pay for field trips.
And that was kind of like what you were saying when you said about Hooked on Phonics. You might have to pay for that in a private school. You might have to pay for that in the public school, but somehow you might have to pay.
Really, Title IV funding could cover some summer school programs. Title IV was originally created for things like Pell Grants at the college level, but then it got extended under the, I believe, Obama administration in 2015 at ESEA, and I was talking about all that stuff before about funding. It got extended into the elementary and secondary education platforms where Title IV funding exists.
Okay. Go ahead, Jerry. You were going to say something. And Christina, you're breaking up again.
Also, I'm going to get a document. I had someone said they had a document where you don't have to pay for school trips. So I'm going to get that document from him, and I'll share it with both of you.
Okay.
So am I breaking up?
Yes.
You sound good now.
Is it? Go ahead, Christina.
Yeah, I'll figure that out when I restart my phone. I don't know. I've been having phone issues for a couple of weeks now, and now I'm on my phone. I was on my computer. So, there's Ed Code that states, California Ed Code, that a child that doesn't have the ability to pay for field trips cannot be denied access to going on a field trip, right? Now, that's in Cal Ed Code.
Okay.
But in order, and this is what has been justified, that in order for the school to continue to have field trips, they require the parents to pay. However, be it, we're paying for the bus or paying for the trip, your child can't be denied based on your inability to pay.
Okay. So they can't deny a child that can't pay, but what they'll try to do is just say, then we can't go because we can't afford the field trip.
Or they'll tell little, Joey that you still owe the field trip money every day until he has a nervous breakdown.
That's wrong.
Right.
Right.
It literally has happened.
Right.
I'm not going to be able to go. Everybody else paid. I can't pay. Well, what about the fact that
Look right there, Christina. Where does oppression hide in our schools? That falls under adult-student relationships. That falls under communication. That falls under a few of those. I thought I had to show that real quick because as soon as you said it, it reminded me of that real fast. I'm glad you brought that illustration today.
And I actually had just got off of there's a blogger who's very good and well versed in educational issues, and it's Citizen Ed. And I posted one of his articles on my page on Facebook. It's the yellow one. You guys can look at that as a resource. And he reports on education, does responsible and accurate reporting. And I actually had seen that on Twitter, and I was like, oh, this is perfect. When Citizen Ed had tweeted. And so, that's a resource for you parents too, like I said.
Okay, Jerry, you got something you want to add?
No, sir. That right there, she wrapped it up. Again, I do have something. It's one thing how parents deal with the school system. It's another when their kid get behind that closed door and how the teacher and staff treats them.
Right. And I didn't have time to go into all the documents and all the sources of information, but I think we as Black people need to, this is what I'm going to say, and here's my big word for the day, and I'll leave you guys with this in a Webster's dictionary. So I want you guys to look up the term cognitive dissonance, okay?
Yep.
And what I need people to stop doing is ignoring what they see right in their face, what they know to be true historically, and their own parental instincts and intuition every day just to sit there and justify doing something that they know to be hazardous.
Right.
Again, we'll talk about that when we have a conversation about psychology.
I mean, and the basics is when people say, "I can't believe they did that," it happened.
Especially if you know it's going to happen. Believe what's in your face. Believe it.
Right. It's like they say, "I can't believe that." No, it happened.
Yes, you can. Yes, you can. And it's been happening historically for a very long time.
Okay, so cognitive dissonance is what allowed people to sit back and watch lynchings and take their children to them, and or beheadings and you name it, and walk away and then go have a steak and a potato.
Yep. It allows you to be okay with it. Cognitive dissonance here. I'll put it on the screen real quick, just because you left
a dictionary.
Here, yeah, I help them out just in case they don't get to the dictionary.
Okay, I'm glad.
Cognitive dissonance, the state of having inconsistent thoughts, beliefs, or attitudes, especially as relating to behavioral decisions and attitude change. So there goes a quick definition, the dictionary definition of cognitive dissonance. Believe what you see.
Yes. Because the more you push those thoughts and that awareness and shove that down, the more harmful it becomes to your children and future generations because you did nothing. Silence can be permission too.
Where do we first see that on a national level in our generation?
Jerry, we got 5 more hours for this.
Wait, hold on. And can cognitive dissonance be passed down?
But no, I'm gonna say this.
I can't really, speak to. It's not an inherited thing. It's again that argument that we were talking about earlier that I call the, difference between wisdom and foolishness.
Mm-hmm.
But I was going to bring
miseducation or ignorance, right?
Right. I was going to bring up the Rodney King beating. They were saying you're not really seeing that. That's not really going on.
Them nightclubs don't hurt.
Yeah, no. They said he kept trying to get up. He kept, but they're saying and changing your thoughts, and you're like, no, he's getting beat.
Yeah, cognitive dissonance is trying to make you believe Trayvon Martin was in the wrong for fearing for his life.
Right, just like cognitive dissonance is in history books created in a way that we didn't come from nobility and we weren't kings and queens. We were just slaves and just ended up being slaves one day, right?
Right. Wait, I got one more. Cognitive dissonance is expecting somebody to stay still as the police is slamming them on the ground and contorting their body in a way that makes them move. Be still. How? That's cognitive dissonance.
And then to go back and expect something different in the same scenario. I mean, come on. We have to understand what we're looking at is real in order to do something about it.
So Ty, and I'm gonna go ahead and get off.
Me too. I got a meeting.
Let me ask any more questions first.
Let me see. We got a couple comments. I see. I think we the parents should watch those kind of documentaries with our children and explain them and address the emotions they feel. I think they were talking about the documentary with the Central Park 5.
I agree, but also they need to have the same debrief every day when their kid come home. At least.
Yeah, here's the thing about that. How are we building our kids up every day and then debriefing them and then sending them back into the same place again? Like, what kind of war training is that?
That causes PTSD.
The reason why I say that, because I'm for school choice. As the Black student advocate, we're for school choice. Parents right now might be scared and might not move their kid. Okay. So I'm just giving them a tool and give a suggestion for them to help right now. Because out here in this fight, we got the numbers, we got the data, and we got for what they call educated people who still can't change their mentality.
Jerry, you said we don't need no documentary for you to understand what's going on with your child's education and make you want to move.
No, I mean, they come home and kids come home every day complaining, but parents have to give that child a chance to let that out. Because what happens is when a child is experiencing things at school and our research and the work we do is minimized. But when a kid finally lashes out, then the district is heavy-handed and want to talk about what little Jerry did to get this kid off his back.
Mm-hmm.
So
we see. You gotta look at what the buildup is. So, like I always use this example, not speaking from any formal organization. When people come to me for assistance with their situation under my formal title as education chair, in NAACP, they're not seeking the whole civil rights organization if they haven't exhausted every means of trying to solve an issue primarily. So what does that look like? That could have been a build-up time that already took place prior to them looking for the help. Just like what was the build-up prior to these laws being put on the books.
I think something else, Tyrone, is that parents are sending their best students every day from their home. You understand? Okay. They're not holding back the good students at home and saying, I'm going to send the worst one to school.
Right.
They're sending their best scholars to school every day.
Right.
And so that school just might not be the key to unlock all the possibilities of that young scholar.
Right. And you need to figure out how to unlock the keys to that young scholar. And like you guys are saying, pay attention to them and listen to them and don't be afraid to nurture that. I think sometimes a lot of people don't feel like they have a choice. And that's why I like when you guys do this. I like when we have these discussions because people do start to realize they have a choice. Some people think, well, I can't afford private schools, so the only choice I have is to send my child to this school. And then when a child is getting bullied and going through all these type of things, just like Christina said, you don't look at the buildup. And so when the child just blow up, then we get questions like this. How do I know when it's time to move my child? You see, how do I know whether to believe my child or the school? But like you guys are saying, you guys have to look at the buildup.
It's time to move them.
when the question come up, the question is the answer, huh? It's time to go.
If you are asking that question, then you are not 100% confident in that particular educational environment's ability to educate your child and give them fairness.
We got another inbox question. This must be a teacher.
This will be my last one. Then y'all don't have to find me at parentunionrc@gmail.com or 951-266-6911.
Okay, and this is, we can't say the name. And the question, I guess it's to both of you. It says, I'm a teacher. I've been a teacher for 22 years. Last year, I had a student that I know didn't belong at the school that I teach. As a teacher, how do I recommend that a child get sent to another school for the best interest of the child?
My number is 951-313-1919. So that's 95-1313-1919. So that's a call that a parent can call me or a teacher can call me on. And then from that, I can get involved. You know, but the thing is, we need teachers, counselors, and everyone else inside the building to help us from the inside out, to help these families.
You have something that you wanted to add?
What I'm saying is that we need a trend And the fact that, and I don't know if she's a Black educator, that the Black educators that have tried to advocate on behalf of our students become punished too. So it's very hard to take that role and then also know that you're working for this environment that provides your bread and butter. I mean,
that's why I said call me, because I can be creative in how I come to the district. Because being media, I'm not going to expose the staff, because again, that's their livelihood. That's how they eat, how they pay their mortgage, how they send their kid to school, how they pay off their high student loans.
Okay, the teacher says
what that sounds like to me though is that because they were getting so much money, probably because that kid might have some special needs, they didn't want to move their kid.
Okay, the teacher says, I really care for the student. I really care for all my students, but I'm in a position to where it's hard to say something, and I'm sure you guys know how it is.
Yeah, that's what I call the educational yellow line. If she crosses or he crosses the yellow line, that's just as hard as a blue line for law enforcement, and their career is over because they're going against the district.
Okay. Well, I guess that was the final question. I want to thank that teacher. We always get that inbox question. We get
right.
You know, as long as people are coming out and knowing that this is something that is happening, and you see they're admitting to it. I mean, you can remain anonymous, and you know, please, if the resources to contact Jerry, do so. But don't become silent, and you know, you can remain anonymous.
Okay, and I didn't know that was something that teachers went through. I'm actually glad to get that question. It sounds like a teacher that cares.
Oh, let me tell you something, man. Anytime staff speak out against the district, they're not a team player anymore.
Mm-hmm. And let me just get this fact out there. It's not just teachers. It's school psychologists, not all of them, but I'm saying I have a handful of Black ones that are under turmoil because of what they see. Counselors that don't want to go against their code of ethics of counseling, and being able to advocate on behalf of children and families, but they have to shut me down every time they want to advocate for our kids.
Right. And so they get ostracized, and then the problems start. Okay.
Well, no. Let's straighten it out. They're not ostracized. They're targeted.
Okay, they're targeted.
It ain't no ostracized.
There's no ostracism going on.
Now you're not a team player, and now administration do what they need to do to get you out, and they kill your career because you could try to transfer to another district, but everybody know each other in education, just like any other industry. So they'll put the word out that you're not a team player.
They'll sabotage your career.
Really, you're done. It's reality.
You know, I don't want to use it as an excuse because the most vulnerable people in this whole situation are the children. So I don't want anyone to use that as an excuse not to do accurate and informed reporting. Bottom line, you know, so it can be an anonymous tip. Who cares? We're not gonna, that's okay. We care about the children that are being harmed.
Okay, let me give you this story, and I'm gonna shut it down.
Yeah,
right now, at Riverside Unified School District, at an elementary school, it was some sexual inappropriateness with some students from staff. Instead of the mandated reporter calling CPS, they try to keep it under wraps to basically cover the district because they don't want to cross the yellow line.
So it's just like the police with the blue line. It's just
correct.
Like gangs with no snitching.
Or worse. Or worse.
Right. It's
but
just like that's
well,
like the mafia. Don't cross us.
but no. Let me tell you the difference, though. The difference is educators might have $50,000 to $150,000 in student loans.
Wow.
Difference.
Wow.
You know, that's an adult problem and not a kid problem.
No, I get it, but I'm just saying what it is. And you're right. You're right.
Christina said, hey, no, none of that got nothing to do with the kids, period. Still do the right thing. Don't matter.
I agree.
In the mountains that's in front of you. Still do the right thing.
But this is what we're giving them is a way to do the right thing.
Right. You're giving them a way to get over that mountain.
Yes.
A resource. So it won't be an excuse. It'll just be something that you guys can fix together.
Correct.
Okay.
All right, you guys.
On that note, I will talk to you guys later. If there's topics that you want to see us talk about, I'm going to continue to build off of this. We can talk about funding next time. But if there's a particular questions or topics you want to see, send them to Tyrone or Gary, not me, and not playing.
Well, I missed what you said.
I'm saying that there's particular things that you guys want to hear discussed. You can send them to us, and we will discuss them. I have a Parent Union Inland Empire page on Facebook, Parent Union RC at gmail.com, and 951-266-6911 is the number you can contact me at. Okay, we really do care about your children.
Really.
So you gotta love her last 3 digits, 911.
but she only wants you to call if you serious, just like 911. You know you can't call 911 and ask the weather. You got to call 911 when you serious. It's the same thing with Christina. Don't call her if you just want to talk about the weather.
Well,
Call her if you want to change it.
and I just want to be, it's okay if you need information, I'll get it to you. We can email for that. But when you really want someone, time to act, let's learn what that looks like, and let's do that. But me and Jerry are available, and a lot of times we tag team things.
Okay. All right. And Christina, we're gonna have to go ahead and end it because your internet's not acting right tonight. It's giving you the fits.
Tomorrow, not tomorrow. The next time I'm gonna pick a better spot. I'm sorry to all people.
There's nothing you could do about it. Last week we tried to do this and Zoom didn't even work, just out of nowhere. So we know sometimes these things happen, and you know what? Maybe you guys are just giving too much knowledge.
We're talking about the right thing. Good night, everybody.
Good night.
Good night.
All right, thanks, Jerry. I'll see you guys later. We'll be doing this.
No problem.
All right, bye, you guys.
Bye-bye.